Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to This is Murder Under the Friday Night Lights, and it's Do It for One.
And they just breed football. It's like badminton. It's a touchdown for the Rams.
Watching high school football in Edgar, you're usually watching a family member. In my case, my dad was a great running back.
The whole town of Edgar just wanted the Rams to win at any cost.
When you're winning, it's the best football in the world. It was just so gratifying to see my son doing something that he liked. Felt real good.
Here we were, two kids, a starting running back, starting quarterback. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to play for it all.
This is 2 o'clock in the morning when everybody piles out of these nightclubs. And then we have a shooting.
I was down on my knees holding Juan, bleeding out. It was all black. It seemed like it was a drama.
It's a very up close shooting, which to me makes it very personal.
How intense and passionate they are about their Friday Night Lights. The community was as passionate towards finding some form of justice for Juan.
I'm sitting and I'm wondering who shot my job.
High school football in that guard is like a rite of passage. It's like church. When you go to the grocery store, they're all talking about football.
Juan Anthony Joseph was my son, my firstborn. Juan was gifted athletically. That was just so easy for him.
Second down, 11 to go.
2004, Juan became starting quarterback at West St. John. Juan didn't even throw an interception.
That is a big deal to be the quarterback of the West St. John Fighting Rams. You have to show the fans that you're tough and you're a winner. Because the whole town of Edgar just wanted the Rams to win at any cost.
Here comes Joseph again, but his Rams second down and the fake to Jackson and then the throw over the middle to a receiver. Touchdown, West St. John.
Well, that's Ram football right there. That's what those people right there used to see them.
I've watched Juan from the minute that he arrived at the high school playing athletics, being involved with the football program. He was a kid that you could see where it was with him. It was up here. It was all mental. He understood. He was one step ahead of everybody else.
His first year, they won the state championships in the Louisiana Superdome. It was a great feeling just being there looking at my son compete and feeling like, wow.
Juan was the community's hero. I used to come and watch Juan play when I was a little kid, about 7, 8 years old. I used to be that kid on the side of the stadium playing throw tackle with a Gatorade bottle. Pretty much my whole life, I knew I wanted to be like Juan and all the other West St. John legends that I watched growing up. You can't wait to put on that helmet, play on the field.
12.5 yards per carry in this one for Jackson.
So Joseph is dealing to Jackson right now. He has an opening. He is headed to the end zone. It's a touchdown for the Rams.
Juan is a childhood friend of mine. We've been knowing each other since we were like 6, 7 years old. We went to high school. We started finding out who we were, through football. And the rest is history.
After graduating high school, Juan went to Millsaps College in Mississippi. Juan played quarterback there. My excitement when watching him play was he would run the ball sometimes. And I was standing up, it's like, Juan's running the ball. Run, Juan. So when Juan got married to Caleb. That was a highlight for him in his life. I remember talking to him and he says, you know, Mom, you know how they say we live happily ever after? Those were his words.
In August in 2011, Juan was just ready to open a new chapter in his life. He had a beautiful young wife that he loved. He had a beautiful daughter. And he realized that I have a greater calling to go back home and just be with people who I love, give back to my community, give back to young kids.
What better way to do it than to become a coach for the other students? So he brought his family back with him, Kayla and Arya, and he became the West St. John quarterback coach.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Coach Juan Joseph. I went to high school here. I graduated in 2005. The biggest thing that I focus on my quarterbacks is telling them to have quick feet and have quick thinking. So I just focus on telling them to trust their eyes and play fast.
He felt like that was a proud title to have when he would come home. It's like, I'm the quarterback coach, man. So,
I think the biggest impact with him is that it wasn't never like a job for him. Yeah, he always made it look so fun. And it made other guys around him relax and have fun. And he was always a jokester and a prankster, but he knew that I was always meticulous with the schedule. So one time he came in and he changed my alarm clock. So man, I wake up and everybody's already at practice. And he's laughing because he's like, damn, coach, what, just overslept. Juan represented all of the good things from our community.
he's a celebrity and he feels that way, but they were just happy to see Juan, like off the football field to get a handshake. There was people that would cook Juan's favorite dish just for him to come over to eat.
In 2014, I was a senior receiver here at West St. John. I wanted to win state extremely bad.
Now, our goal is always to win a championship. And that's what it was about. It was about wanting to win another title, wanting to get another ring put in their finger. We really had a collection of guys that really worked so well together. But after that Saturday night, everything changed. It wasn't the same.
In November 2014, Kayla was expecting their second child, and we were excited about that. We knew that it was going to be a girl. Juan had prepared setting up the nursery for their second daughter.
Everything was going pretty well around that time. It was football season. The weather was nice. They were expecting the second child, and I remember us having a conversation with like, you're having two girls, bro. Like, what did you do wrong? Like, you couldn't get it right and have a boy.
That night on Saturday, I was on the night shift, and I got a call from my wife, and she said, "I'm going to the hospital." And I was like, "Oh, good. Kayla's getting ready to have that baby. Good." So she said, "You're not listening to me. Juan has been shot." And I was like, "What? Did what?" And then I think I may have dropped the phone. I rushed out. In my phone, I had Betty's name as my wife. And I kept saying to myself, as long as I don't never see a call come through from my wife, everything's okay. By the time I got pretty close, my phone was sitting on the passenger seat and it rang and it said, my wife.
When I arrived at the hospital, I saw the two doctors standing there, and they looked at me and they said, "I'm sorry." And I remember falling to my knees to the floor and just crying to the floor, you know. And
We got the call closer to 3 o'clock in the morning. Hey, there's a club shooting over here off of Bennington, and we have one guy down, and he went to the hospital. We go to the hospital, and I learned that Juan Joseph has passed away from his injuries. That's when it became a homicide. My next step is to go in there and start finding either next of kin or people that saw this, witnesses at the hospital that would have been there and knew something. And it was a profound sadness that was hanging over the room when you walked in. Juan's dad kind of told me a lot about Juan and how he was.
I do remember speaking with Detective Ballard, and one thing that he said to me was, Mr. Joseph, I promise you, I will get to the bottom of this and find out who killed your son.
November 15th, we traveled to Southern University in Baton Rouge for the football game against Mississippi Valley. We were privileged to be up watching the game from the suite. And I remember conversations with Juan about a coworker that was having a birthday party and that he wanted to go pass by the birthday party. He felt like, well, I hadn't gone out in a long time. And that I know that I won't be going out for a long time because we have a new baby at the house.
That's when him and Pat Jackson and William Griffin went to Club Allure in Baton Rouge. Going out wasn't something that he did often, at least not to a club. So this was kind of, I don't know, different. I remember the last thing I told him was like, be careful. Like whatever you do, just be careful. That was my last words to him.
This is 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's when everybody piles out of these nightclubs. And then we have a shooting. There's cars screeching and leaving, and people running for cover. And at the scene, we were trying to sift through all that stuff to find witnesses and anything of evidentiary value that we can from that parking lot. It's really dark out there. We were searching with flashlights, but we did find some shell casings that night. Those were photographed and collected by our crime scene division.
Initially on scene, we don't have the names of any shooters or persons involved in the crime, but we have descriptions of the vehicle involved.
Witnesses are saying we have a black car leaving the scene. That's pretty much one of our first pieces of information that we got. We brought Juan's friends, Patrick Jackson and William Griffin, back to our office before daylight. It was, I want to say it's around 5 o'clock in the morning. Patrick Jackson is a lifelong friend of Juan Joseph. They played football together, and they've been coaching together at Edgar. William Griffin is more of a friend of Patrick's. Juan would have came in to knowing through Patrick.
Griffin and I are both pretty mentally exhausted. We were just trying to give our best perspective in the best way possible.
Once again, I'm Detective Hodge, Detective Ballard.
Given the circumstances, Patrick was handling it quite well, but you could tell that it was weighing on. Most people don't see their best friend from their whole life shot and killed right in front of them.
Can I take us from the start, kind of what happened?
So we end up on our Lord.
Who was you said you killed?
When we was leaving the club, it was around the time the club was closing. So we all were together right outside of the exit of the Lord. And William saw somebody he knew. So he walked off towards the parking lot that he had, like across the street. And he in that moment is when we saw that a car almost hit Griffin, who is William. That started a verbal altercation between Griffin, the driver. I'm the one who tried to restrain William, like, we good or whatever, we don't know these people or whatever, let's go. As Juan talking to the passenger, and I'm talking to William, the driver pulls out a gun, still a gun. I'm trying to back him off or whatever. And Juan is still trying to hash it out with the passenger, but the passenger had a pistol as well. It was all black. It seemed like it was a Glock. I recall seeing Juan, trying to knock the gun out of his hand. He even pointed the gun at Juan, and he fired 2 rounds into Juan's chest. Juan hits the ground. They hop in the car. They're pulling off. We're running to Juan. Juan is down on the ground now, bleeding. I'm like, okay, I gotta get the license plate. But I think that was my first time experiencing like complete shock, because in that moment I'm reciting the license plate like verbatim, and I am remembering nothing. I'm not retaining not one letter, one number in that license plate. I got Juan in my hands, keeping him alert. He's bleeding a lot. He and I are talking, and then it started getting to more of like, man, look, tell my wife I love her. And I was like, nah, you gonna tell your wife you love her yourself when you see her again.
Patrick let us know that there was at least 2 people in the car, because initially the argument was with William Griffin and the driver. So we're at least looking for 2 people. Patrick kind of locked down the Mercedes for us. Patrick knew his cars and said this was what that I saw leaving the scene. William Griffin was more all over the place. It was harder to keep William on track. He was so beside himself and kind of being so loud and boisterous.
I'm gonna hear my freaking friend. Did you get in a fight with someone? What happened? To be honest, that'd be best. I can't even remember, man. I don't even know how that thing happened, to be honest with you. Next thing you know, either the guy that I know got to argue with another guy, or we didn't have to argue with another guy. Whatever the case may be, could have been both of us. So you don't know if you got an argument with someone? You can't tell me if you got an argument? No, I can't tell you that. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Right, but I'm just trying to remember. Well, remember for your dead friend. He felt like there was somebody that was jealous of his football status that he had attained, playing pro ball or being a football star in college. From the way that Juan was shot, it didn't look like this was something that was done accidentally. He was directly targeted. From the way that the wounds looked, this is a very up close and intimate shooting. To me, that makes it very personal.
When this happened, I'm getting like a plethora of calls. And then habitually you just log on to Facebook, and it's all over your timeline, it's all over everyone's timeline.
Not even 24 hours after his death, friends of 27-year-old Juan Joseph are clinging to the many bright moments in his life, many of those surrounding the game he loved. Baton Rouge police tell us Joseph was leaving a nightclub near College Drive with 2 friends around 2 a.m. Sunday when the group started arguing with 2 men parked in a black vehicle. Joseph was rushed to the hospital where he later died.
I probably cried for like 3 hours. It hit the whole community. Everybody felt that we lost a good person and a positive role model. Later that Sunday evening, we had a little get together, about 200 or so more people, and we just gathered around and kind of grieved together and prayed together.
It was a tough day that we'll never forget. We'll never forget trying to figure out where do we go from here? What's next?
I think everybody was in total shock that this actually happened to Juan Joseph. Juan didn't go out looking for trouble, especially gun violence. That's not the child that my parents raised. Everyone wanted justice. I need answers.
And we have to get the football players together to play a game. I don't think that we ever factored not playing. There's the playoffs. We were hoping to win a state championship to honor Juan.
The people here at West St. John High School have been grieving the loss of assistant football coach Juan Joseph. But tonight, they celebrate his memory the only way they know how.
The Juan that I know would want us to go out, play a football game.
I remember Greg running out with the football team, crashing through the banner that the cheerleaders had made.
I just broke through the paper. I said, let's do it, you know.
They released 27 blue and white balloons. He lost his life at 27 years old.
It was the kids who came up with the slogan, "Do it for Juan," and they literally did it for Juan.
We won 51-0. Getting that win for the community meant a lot.
At the end, we were celebrating a victory, but we was ultimately celebrating Juan's life.
But we're still wondering, like, where is the investigation going?
Officers are contacting nearby businesses and seeing if there's any video surveillance in the area. Sadly, this club had no video surveillance, period.
It seemed like every camera that we went to look at was facing the wrong direction, or it caught something that had nothing to do with this scene. At this point, a black Mercedes is our biggest lead. Everyone's telling us black Mercedes, black Mercedes. Then we get video footage from a nearby gas station, and it was like, okay, holy. We see this black Mercedes just shortly after everybody's leaving this nightclub, cutting through at a high rate of speed through the parking lot. So we knew that we were on to something, but we have no idea why Juan was shot. We don't know what they were arguing about. I mean, this could have very well been an argument over football.
The rivalries are intense. We lost last year here at St. James in the state quarterfinals when this guy decides that he wants to post on social media that Coach Valdez, all his coaches and his quarterback all need to be shot after that performance last night.
The passion is very high because you bleed blue and white.
There's the territorial stuff between some of the neighborhoods in Edgewater. The first time that we played West St. John at St. James, with me being a head coach, tough ball game that was basically marred by shooting in a parking lot. We had to seek shelter because the sheriff department came in and said, hey, we have shooting, which is always scary.
We know we have two guys. We know we have one shooter. We don't have any names. We have no direction to go into other than this vehicle and the statements of Patrick and Griffin. These are football coaches. They're, upstanding citizens of the community. People look up to them. They're not somebody that you think are going to be shot in the middle of Baton Rouge at 2 o'clock in the morning.
The community of Edgard has such a strong love for Juan as a person, and they found that it was important that we find out who did this to Juan. I was getting phone calls, and people was wanting to, I guess, create a posse, if you will, to go and find the person who killed Juan.
The community, how intense and passionate they are about their Friday night lights. The community was as passionate or more passionate towards finding some form of justice for Juan.
Police are hoping someone will speak up. Anyone with information is asked to call Crime Stoppers 344 STOP.
That played a pivotal part in the tip line. I think people wanted to get this situation resolved, so they weren't hesitant to call the tip line.
It's within, I think, 24 hours of the shooting that there are Crime Stoppers tips that are being reported naming Kendrick Cloud and Lamar Cloud.
This was a huge break for us.
Terrence Kelly rumbled to a 55-yard touchdown.
All-star football player from the best high school football program in the country. He was going places.
He was one of our brightest and one of our best.
The great ones want to win at everything, no matter what it is. That was TK.
TK had the ability to do whatever he wanted. I've seen this dude work. He's Superman.
And then he took it upon himself to reload and hit him 3 or 4 more times with the same gun.
That's not just a murder. That's a straight assassination.
Rich City was our name for it. Richmond. Rich with friendship, rich with family. The city of pride and purpose, and it really is that. You have pride in being from Richmond because it's a small city. The stigma of Richmond of it being negative and violent and not having too many positive things coming from it. We take pride in being the opposite.
I would classify Richmond, California as a community between 100 and 110,000. Built of people, really hardworking people. I mean, it's not a great deal of money in the city. There's no major business. Richmond doesn't even have a mall anymore. But that's the place I grew up with my kids. That's the place my wife grew up. Home is where family and friends are.
Football was our safe haven. Football in Richmond gave us a sense of community. Everyone from the coaches to the parents had a duty to the kids, and the kids had a duty to being great players. Plenty of weekends where coaches would take in players who had it a little harder at home, and we'd all sleep together, big sleepovers. A lot of kids from different parts of Richmond knew each other, grew up together because we played football. My cousin Terrence Kelly was a son of Richmond. He wanted to show the city, the world, that you don't have to be a product of your environment. Put the time in and just have some focus and have a purpose. And Terrence had purpose. He was our out. He was the first one that was going to get out. You know, the first one that was going to take us out of our struggle.
Terrence Kelly, TK, man, was what we call a hometown hero. He was a very phenomenal, great athlete. He emulated exactly what that Richmond moniker meant in terms of having that pride and purpose.
He was pretty much my lifeline. He was my blueprint. Hero might be an understatement. I was his shadow, doing everything that Terrence did, wanting to be like him in all ways.
Terrence was a great guy, really well-rounded guy, somebody who was able to effectively be a bridge between two very different worlds. Richmond, California, and then affluent East Bay suburbs where De La Salle is located in Concord, only 14 miles away, but two different Americas.
I think the transition from going from Richmond to De La Salle High School was pretty much a totally different world for him. But like anything else, if anything worth having is worth struggling for it.
You know, it is tough for a person of color to come to De La Salle. If a kid is zoned to go to a public school down there and comes to De La Salle, he becomes kind of like a pariah. They call him traitor, stabbed us in the back, and that type of thing, especially the athletes. Terrence had a life out here, and he had a life back there. One in Concord, one in Richmond. Could see Terrence torn between the two.
He had that ability to really touch every crowd, which is why he felt it was on him to bridge those gaps. He was seeing he could do things and go places that other people couldn't. He knew that, he embraced it, he accepted it, and he handled it well.
When you first get to high school, you're skinny, you're scrawny, you're not, built. But what he had was he had all the attributes of an athlete, right? Long arms, long legs, high cut. So he had everything.
You had to be here at 6 a.m. in the morning. We lift until 8 o'clock. Then you roll into class. So you're in class for all day long. From after class, you have football practice, normally 2.5 hours. Then after that, now you got to go back home. You're not getting home sometimes until 7 o'clock at night. Even on the weekends. We were here on the weekends watching film, Saturday mornings. So 6 days a week, we're literally here at De La Salle.
TK was always on time. He always had a smile on his face, and he always busted his butt. He knew there was something bigger for him out there, and he was going to go get it.
Terrence never lost a varsity football game. His play definitely secured him a Division I scholarship to Oregon.
It was amazing to see all these colleges come after him.
I graduated with Terrence Kelly in 2004. He started Oregon over the summer.
He went out early for the summer workouts because they had foreseen him being a key role player coming right in. Everyone was just so excited. And, we all just seen it as if he makes it, we make it. He came home for a few days. Just a few days. That night was just going to be our last time to really, hang out and kick it before he left for college. I told my dad, hey, I'm about to go with Terrence. It was probably about 5 minutes after that call came through, and it was it's still unbelievable, to this day to hear those words. Terrence is dead. Terrence has been shot. I don't even think I thought, honestly, I couldn't even fathom the words that I was hearing.
The scene was pretty chaotic. The police tape was up. A lot of bystanders, a lot of people looking, a lot of people screaming.
To see him laying there in blood, I'm crying, but I can't even hear my voice because I'm just hearing, the pain of my family. Everybody's breaking down. And then you hear Landrum.
TK's dad, Landrum, was out of himself. Kept repeating himself over and over, screaming, crying, what am I going to do now?
my baby. What am I gonna do now? All I could do is grab him and hold him and just squeeze. I had no words to give him.
My grandmother got to the scene and she was just so heartbroken and it was so painful that she had a heart attack and had to be taken to a hospital right here. 18 years of work, 18 years of sacrifice and doing right for your kid, just to see them lying in the middle of the street, dead. It would take anybody's heart.
I remember getting a text from one of my other teammates. The text came across like, "Man, TK got shot," and I'm thinking it's a joke. Like, what are you talking about? Then my phone starts blowing up, so I know something's going on. I didn't sleep at night because now I'm calling all my boys. Everyone's trying to figure out what's going on. I might have slept maybe 30 minutes. I found out the next morning that he had died, which was, it's heartbreaking, right? It made life tough for a lot of us for a long time.
An East Bay High School football star who had everything to live for is now just a legacy.
Terrence Kelly, a top football player at undefeated De La Salle High School. The former star of conference undefeated De La Salle High School football team was shot to death.
I wasn't expecting to see him laid out in the streets. We were in a state of disbelief.
Shot, killed. We're like, whoa, this has got to be a mistake. That it can't be him.
I was home on call for any homicides, and I got the call probably 10:45. They don't give you a lot of information. Hey, we've had a homicide. You and your partner up. The murder happened near the intersection of 7th and 11th in central Richmond. It was a hectic scene. A lot of looky-loos. We had several police officers on scene for patrol. Family members were there.
When we got to the scene, it was a couple of hundred people out there. Because maybe the word got around town that Terrence got shot.
I tried to go under the police line because I just couldn't believe that he was, I was like, shake him, wake him up, like, TK, wake up.
We had to kind of tread lightly with the family, trying to get information. Who may have done this, what the motive was. I saw the father very overcome with grief, but trying to hold it together. He's asked me anything. Let me, I want to help you. Once people found out who the victim was, it wasn't your normal Richmond homicide. It was a tragedy. To me, all my murders I worked were tragedies, but this took on a different vibe. It was up close and friendly, pretty much in my mind, just an assassination.
Thank you, Mom. Hope you have a Merry Christmas. I'm gonna have a good Christmas because you're happy. Thank you, Mom.
2719 Florida Ave. My auntie ran the daycare out of this house. Everything sprang from this house, from Thanksgiving dinners to family functions. This is where we all migrated to, and we all got to see our cousins come up on Christmas, see them open their presents, and she believed in family.
We just stayed at my grandmother's house growing up, shared a bed, shared clothes. We pretty much did everything together.
Evelyn Kelly, TK's grandmother, she basically raised Terrence. When TK's father was at work, Terrence called her mama. Evelyn was a truly special woman, a really one-of-a-kind mother to not only Terrence, but a lot of these kids in the neighborhood who didn't maybe have a place to go.
Grandma was our first coach growing up. We always played sports in the backyard at a daycare. Little League Baseball was our first football when we turned 8.
There was a lot of his friends that were in their daycare there with him. And from there, those guys became the core of Terrence's first sports teams from T-ball on up.
Terrence's dad, Landry, sacrificed 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs all day if he had to for Terrence. Landry worked nights during the day and then coaches in the afternoon.
Thank you to the coaching staff, Landry Kelly.
Landry put everything into Terrence's sports. He coached every team. He was hard on them. He trained them nonstop. he wanted Terrence to have better, and so he gave everything to make that happen.
It was our grandmother's idea to put TK and me in private school. She wanted us to experience something that, you know, most kids probably wouldn't get to experience coming from the inner cities of Richmond. At the time, De La Salle was the #1 high school football program in the country. Terrence became their #1 player. He had prepared for that moment, and he was most deserving of it.
So got a 144-game winning streak. The winning streak obviously was a big part of putting this on a TV.
Team in the green, De La Salle High, #1 ranked team in the nation.
I remember him scoring his first touchdown and just, you know, pointing to where his family was. Like, I'm doing this for y'all. You know, we're here. You know, this is what we've been waiting on. Our time is now.
There's Kelly for the second touchdown.
Who won the game? 2017. No doubt that night was Terrence Kelly's coming out party where everyone on national TV saw how great of a player he really was.
At that time, we had lost a high school football game. We were putting guys into the college like crazy. The team that we all played on, 12 of us went to the National Football League. We were the most dominant football team there ever was in the history of high school football. And yet, when you have so much success, it just reminds you that there are people that are lurking that don't like it.
Before that happened, I'm calling him. Hey, TK, I'm home. I'm all right. He was supposed to leave straight to come get me. He says, yeah, I just got to make a quick stop right quick. Picking up Brandon Young.
Terrence's father was dating Brandon's mom, and all four of them were living in the same house together.
Brandon and TK consider themselves brothers.
Terrence will put anybody before him. So if Brandon is calling and say, hey, I need a ride, Terrence is going to stop.
That night, TK went to Central Richmond to pick up Brandon, who was there visiting his girlfriend. Terrence was driving his dad's Oldsmobile.
Terrence wanted Brandon to be outside. Brandon responded, no, I don't want to stand outside. Just text me when you get here. And so that's what Terrence did.
Brandon did provide a statement to the police. Brandon says he heard the gunshot, then made it out of the house, went to the street, and saw that the car that TK was driving at the time, the Oldsmobile, had come to rest against the bumper of another parked vehicle. He saw TK partially laying outside the vehicle. Brandon ran back to his girlfriend's house, beat on the door. He yelled for them to call his mama, call an ambulance, do something. And Brandon then left and ran just up the street, 1 block, to Kaiser Hospital. TK was pronounced dead at the scene.
Terrence Kelly was shot multiple times, of very close range.
Richmond Police Department discovered shell casings from a .22. They also found a knit hat left at the scene.
Our crime scene investigators came out. They used a police canine to search the area for evidence.
In the backyard of Brandon's girlfriend's house, wrapped up, they found a .22 caliber bolt-action rifle.
They find a total of 3 expended casings in the street near the vehicle, near the victim, and they find 1 expended casing still in the rifle. By the location of the expended casings from the rifle, we are able to surmise that the suspect was moving at the same time he was shooting and re-racking. At this particular time, we didn't really have a motive. Just very, very limited physical evidence. We had casings, we had a gun, we had a beanie, we had a body. A lot of things go through your head. Was it a drug rep? Was it a drive-by and he was not the intended victim? Was it a beef over where he lived? Was he from Central? Because if you're not from Central, you shouldn't be in Central, right? When crack cocaine emerged in the 80s, that's when Richmond really turned. It became very territorial.
Richmond's divided by North, South, Central Richmond, and you pretty much had to stay where you're from.
It's amazing. People identify with the area of town they're from. If they believe you're not from that area, there's a good chance you're going to get shot or at least get beat up.
TK grew up in the South Side, but athletes seem to have gotten a pass. There's no place in Richmond Terrence couldn't go because he wasn't into the street politics. People wouldn't vouch for him. They all, no, that's TK. He's cool. No, he's not into that.
He was off limits based on the fact that he was a star athlete.
Nothing like that happens on a fluke, with someone like that. I personally thought it was premeditated.
You shoot somebody one time and run away like a lot of people do. This suspect sat there and shot him 4 times. When you're using a bolt action, you've got to mentally think, oh, I got to put another bullet into the chamber and shoot again. So he had to think, I'm shooting this guy again. I'm shooting him again. I'm shooting him again. It's beyond belief that kind of pent-up rage.
He was Richmond, all of Richmond. So why would anybody from Richmond do such a thing?
And then when you find out the real reason why it happened, that didn't make any sense. That shouldn't have never happened.
When I heard how Terrence died, that was the last thing I expected. It was, maybe it was just my own naivete. I knew he's from Richmond, but all the time we had him here, the thought of him being involved and killed by street violence blew us away.
I've been coaching 39 years, and I've been around, but the tragedy of this one was the hardest death I've ever had to deal with. It still haunts me. Never really gotten over it.
What happened right after Terrence Kelly got murdered? Had a chapel service here, but the first formal thing we did as a team was get on the bus and ride out to Richmond for his funeral.
Today is the day we let go of Terrence and turn him back to the Father so he can love him even more than we could ever do.
I was trying to make sense out of the tragedy. It was hard. Service is like, well, he's in a better place, and this was meant to be, or this was God's plan. I don't think anybody felt that way. It's just, it was horrible.
After Terrence's death, it just seemed like a lot of people were just like, oh no, this is Richmond. No one's going to make it out. It kind of just took life out of a lot of people where they had hope.
They lost a star. Somebody that was like born and bred and represented their community. After that, I didn't look at Richmond the same no more. I thought, nothing can happen to family in Richmond. And when a family member's taken from you in that way, you look at the world different.
This is going to be the guy we're going to buy his jersey when he makes it to the NFL. And he was our hope. He was our possibility and probability. The whole community was just at a loss.
Seeing what happened to TK, it changed the way that I personally started to live my life. This easily could have been me. Anyone can be touched, right? So many times we especially in the Black community, and underprivileged communities and communities of poverty and ghettos, they do everything they can to help you get out. Your parents are doing everything they can. Andrew's getting them up, taking them to school every day. They moved him out of that school district, put him in the De La Salle. They did all the necessary things that happened. It still wasn't enough.
The biggest challenge in this case is one, getting people to talk about what they saw, to convince them to come forward and tell the truth. That really holds true for the streets. Keep it to yourself, or you're subject to some type of retaliation.
If you are seen speaking to the police officer, you could end up in the same position as a victim of a homicide. He had no weapon on him. He had no defensive wounds on him. It came as quite a surprise to him from looking at the way the bullets struck.
TK's foot was on the brake when he had stopped to pick up Brandon. After receiving the first shot, his foot came off the brake and the vehicle started to lurch forward.
The shooter was keeping pace with the moving vehicle, shooting through the passenger window.
Operating the lever, cocking it, firing. Operating, cocking, firing. Terrence Kelly was hit 3 times in the face and or head. And that 4th round, it was in the back, and he probably received that after he slumped forward.
It wasn't a drive-by. It wasn't a walk-by. It's 4 shots fired, 4 hits on. That's not just a murder. That's a straight assassination. I'm not a big CSI guy, but the .22 caliber long rifle recovered near our crime scene. Inside of it was an extended casing that matched the casings near the vehicle. We had a murder weapon. We were trying to track down, everybody that could have known Terrence, could have seen him, could have been with him. We found out TK did have a few different girlfriends.
He's always had a way with women. Terrence was a player. Of all sports, women, Terrence loves to play. Didn't turn away any attention.
One of the scenarios that we looked at was that it could be a jealous boyfriend of one of the girls that he had been dating or seeing before this.
TK's father told me that he thought that if there was anyone mad at TK down in Central, it was about the girls, and that was a problem.
But that possibility went nowhere.
The only person that knew Terrence Kelly would be at that location at that time was Brandon Young.
After the murder, Brandon was brought in for questioning by the police and given a lie detector test, and he failed the lie detector test.
He was very, very deceptive. To me, Brandon was the number one suspect from the beginning.
TK's father, Landrin, had a really tough time talking about it. The hurt was too much, that Brandon could have had something to do with this. Brandon was living with Landrin and Terrence. Landrin gave Terrence everything. He was not willing to do all that for Brandon when he knew that Brandon was living more of that street life and not bringing home the best grades. There were some clashes there between Landrin and Brandon. The question was it normal brotherly rivalry and jealousy and there was still love there? Or was there something more deep-seated and angry?
Word on the streets about Brandon and TK's death was Brandon had something to do with it. He possibly set him up because Brandon was jealous of what Terrence was possibly coming up on.
I grew up playing with Brandon. I think there could have been some feels of jealousy, but more so outside voices and influences saying, you're living in a house with a star athlete and you're not a star athlete or you're not doing anything. It can definitely, take a toll and play a role on a person's, feels about them. And if Brandon feels a type of way about, Terrence's dad, okay, well, I'm going to hit you where it hurts.
I didn't really trust TK's stepbrother, Brandon Young. He just didn't seem right from the beginning.
TK had asked Brandon to come outside and wait for him, show up. Brandon told him that he was not going to go outside and just hang out because Brandon, like TK, was not from Central.
So he's in the process of getting his jacket, getting his phone charger. He hears shots. which wasn't 100% believable because the 22 is very, very low sound. He runs outside. He sees TK. He starts yelling, TK, TK. We found out Brandon was part of this little deep sea group, and he was, in my opinion, a little baby gangster trying to be somebody. Brandon lived off of TK's coattails a little bit because of the possible stepbrother status, but TK was leaving, right? So now he's got to do something. In my mind, he knew that his meal ticket was leaving, and he had to figure out, his life after TK, which was going to be with Deep Sea. There was resentment and jealousy with Brandon Young towards TK. We kept interviewing Brandon, and he changed his story a little bit from time to time.
Brandon had got interrogated so many times. The police walked through everything, went after witnesses. Brandon loved TK, and TK loved Brandon. Brandon was going to benefit off of Terrence. So I don't believe Brandon had anything to do with that. There was nothing that I had that indicated conclusively or substantially that Brandon Young participated in the killing of Terrence Kelly.
Brandon did provide a statement to the police. He remembers seeing two of his friends, Larry Pratcher and Darren Pratcher, outside the residence where the murder happened. Larry was the same age as TK, 18 years old. His younger brother Darren was 15 years old.
Brandon, he said he looked outside of the window and saw the Darren Pratcher with the skull cap on. That turned out to be the one that we found on scene, or something similar to that.
That was one of the main giveaways. TK knew the Pratchers, definitely knew Darren. TK and Larry played Pop Warner football together growing up. And Landron was the coach.
Terrence is busy with everything that's going on out at De La Salle. And Larry and Darren, like some of his friends back in Richmond, are going into a different direction. They're heading more towards the streets.
They were part of Deep Sea. And they would attack people who were not from central Richmond. But there was nothing to indicate that Deep Sea was responsible for the murder.
So there was no indication of any type of bad feelings, any type of ill will.
When we were considered a Deep Sea gang, the little baby gangster angle, we were able to start picking out members, get them to talk, but everybody seemed to love TK. He was a prodigy. He could have had problems with people, but one's dead. Now everybody's his friend. The only person that we found that had beef with him, the name kept coming up, Darren Pratcher.
Terrence Kelly was going places, and everybody knew he was going places. Darren Pratcher was not going any place.
Darren wanted to fight Terrence Kelly, but Terrence would never oblige him. It could have been jealousy, but it was also driven more so out of ego. Darren Pratcher was approximately between 5'5" and 5'7", maybe 140 to 155 pounds, maybe soaking wet. Where you have Terrence Kelly, who was 6'1", 230 pounds, a physical specimen.
The problem with Darren was potentially because of three reasons. One being that Terrence was coming into central Richmond as a guy from Southside Richmond. Darren was not liking that. Two, because of girls. That Terrence is coming in and the girls in central Richmond like him. And then three is that Terrence may have been playfully ragging on Larry a little bit. Darren took it personally.
There was a rumor that Darren threw some eggs at TK's car. Another rumor, he'd had some issues with TK at a party. TK shows up and he's walking in. He's big man on campus. Everybody's like, TK! Everybody's high-fiving him, hugging him, giving him the bro hug. And, he's talking to everybody. He's going down the line of all these other guys in the party. And he gets to Darren and he doesn't high-five him, doesn't hug him, doesn't say hi, doesn't do anything. Walked on by.
Later, there was some words exchanged. And Darren challenged Terrence to fight. And from what I was told, TK's response was, I'll break you in half. You're not even worth it. And Darren's response was, why, you going to treat me like I'm a... You can't even fight me? Like I'm a You gonna treat me like that? TK just wasn't concerned about that.
Looking at the case, there were some issues dealing with the problem of who was the actual murderer.
The case against Darren Pratcher was a weak one. The standard for a district attorney's office is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We didn't have testifying witnesses documented. There were holes.
I kept getting word that a kid possibly had killed him. I'm like, a kid? No way. A kid would do this?
We interviewed some gang members who were able to give us some information about a certain apartment in the Barrett Apartments, which was right across the street from the murder scene. We go to that apartment, speak to some young females who had a lot of knowledge about the rifle that was used in the murder. And they were holding the weapon in their apartment for the Deep Sea gang members, and they told us who they gave that weapon to that day.
TK didn't stand snowball chance in head.
When we found out Terrence was killed with a .22 rifle, back then, young kids, you don't have access to a gun or anything like that.
The murder weapon was given to Darren Pratcher. We executed a warrant for Darren's arrest for murder.
Darren's picture was everywhere, and there was a manhunt for him. It was all over the news.
We were all just in shock. You know, we're all in shock. How at 15 are you making a decision to kill somebody? I just can't even begin to fathom how he came to the conclusion that, yeah, I'm about to shoot him right now.
Richmond Police Department executed their search warrant at Darren Pratcher's residence. They arrested Larry Pratcher because they knew he was at the scene of the homicide. Darren wasn't there.
5 days after the murder, Mr. Pratcher turned himself in. We had no place to go, and it was just a matter of time before he was caught.
So Darren comes in, we read him his Miranda rights, and go from there. He denied everything.
He denied being there. When they told Darren that they located a beanie, a skull cap, at the scene of the homicide, and they had it in evidence. He admitted that he had a beanie cap, that he lost it. He dropped it somewhere, didn't remember where. So he did not deny that that was his cap. Remember, Brandon Young had seen him earlier with that same beanie cap.
When we were transporting Darren Pratcher to the juvenile hall, he asked to waive his Miranda rights again and gives another statement. This time, he tells us he was there when it happened. He did not see the shooter, but he was the last one to run from the scene, so that's why everybody thought he did it.
Now the police knew Darren was in fact on scene. They knew where the beanie cap was located.
Darren Pratcher's left ring fingerprint was found on the stock of the rifle. The only fingerprints found on the rifle belongs to Darren Pratcher.
We had the fingerprint. We had his beanie. We had the motive with the disrespect and jealousy. We have him telling us he was at the scene. The last one to run away from the scene. So with that, we were able to get the district attorney to file charges. And once we got him in custody, we got a lot more cooperation from witnesses.
Witnesses put the gun in Darren Pratcher's hand and watched Darren approach the vehicle. One witness asked him if he was actually the one committed the crime shooting Terrence Kelly. His response to her was, I had to do what I had to do.
I think it was an ambush. Just too many hands involved. Too many people was there at the time. Too many people knew. Darren had to ask somebody for the gun. I highly doubt a 15-year-old would wake up and say, I'm going to kill this guy today without any type of outside influence or even not telling somebody about it.
Because of the gang ties, the brother ties, I believe that Brandon Young set it up. Terrence calls Brandon, says, hey, I'm on my way. They know they have a 20-minute window to make this happen. Darren is on the side of the house where the rifle is. Brandon Young's inside. because he's going to have his alibi. Terrence drives up. Brandon ran downstairs and said, "Oh, I forgot my jacket." So he runs back upstairs to get his jacket. Then he runs downstairs and says, "Oh, I forgot my phone charger." So he runs back upstairs to get his phone charger. While he's doing all that inside the house, Larry walks up, looks in through the passenger window. Terrence rolls the window down. "Hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah." Darren comes walking out. Larry steps aside. Darren starts shooting through the window. I think after Brandon Young was a co-conspirator, the district attorney tried only Darren.
Mr. Pratchett was tried as an adult and convicted of first-degree murder. To get a first degree, it is premeditated. He planned it because you obtained a weapon for a reason. You then approached a target for a reason. You then fired that first shot for a reason. But what took this over the top was the fact that you had to recock that weapon 3 additional times. It was precision. Decision, 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 decision. For the first degree murder, Darren Pratchett received a 25-year to life sentence, and then with the enhancement for use of a firearm, another 25 years to life to run consecutively. So Darren received 50 years to life.
When they gave him his sentence, he didn't even react. Somebody gives you 50 to life, and you don't even blink, cold.
I don't feel no better than I felt that day it happened. But one thing that I know, justice was prevailed here today.
TK's death popped everyone's balloon, and there was no correcting it. Our team was down, and man, those guys struggled. Not just athletically, they struggled emotionally. First game of the season, we got creamed.
We lost the winning streak in 151 games, but it's the longest running high school win streak in football history. That was a great achievement, but I can honestly tell you, with all that going on, I could care less. The community was very proud of him that he was going to go on to Oregon. He was determined to make something out of himself. He never got a chance to live his legacy.
It wasn't that we just lost a friend. He was like the beacon. He was the light of our group. I would just love to see what his life would have been like, right? Like if he did make it to the NFL, would he have a family? Or how would he be as a father? What was his other interest in life? Maybe he wanted to be a world traveler. Maybe he wanted to be a chef. We'll just never know. I think that's what hurts more than anything is it's not that his legacy, is just that he never got to live life.
So this is Terrence's personal statement to Oregon. Many people imagine the life of a teenager as being carefree and simple, but that is not the case in the city I live in. Many youth place more importance on being in a gang than in education. A large number of the youth don't even graduate from high school. They either drop out, go to jail, or unfortunately get murdered. I am determined not to end up like many of my peers. I have a strong sense of purpose and direction for my life. I am motivated to strive to be the best person I can be. That was Terrence in a nutshell. I don't think I'd be the man I am today had I not had him in my life.
Number 28, Terrence Kelly.